The Georgia sun beat down on Fort Benning like a hammer on an anvil. It was the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and turned the red clay into dust that stuck to everything. On the training grounds, 32 soldiers stood in formation, their boots planted in that dust, their eyes forward, their bodies already trembling from exhaustion. They were in week 7 of the Advanced Infantry Combat Course, the hardest week. The week that separated those who would make it from those who would break, and standing at the front of that formation, smaller than almost everyone else, was Sergeant Maya Reeves. She was 26 years old, 5'4", 128 pounds soaking wet. She had dark hair pulled back so tight it made her temples ache, brown eyes that burned with something the other soldiers couldn't quite name, and a frame that looked like it belonged in a college library, not on a battlefield. The other soldiers had noticed her from day one. How could they not? She was the only woman in the entire course. Some had whispered, some had stared, and some, like Corporal Danny Hodges and Private First Class Kent Braxton, had made it their personal mission to remind her every single day that she didn't belong. Think she'll make it through today? Hodges muttered under his breath loud enough for half the platoon to hear. Braxton smirked. She won't make it through the next hour. Maya didn't react. She'd learned not to. Reacting gave them power. Reacting gave them ammunition. So she stood there, chin up, eyes forward, and pretended she couldn't hear them, but she heard everything. She always did. At the front of the formation stood Chief Instructor Sergeant First Class Damian Cole. He was a mountain of a man. 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. He'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and had a reputation that preceded him like thunder before a storm. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. And he didn't tolerate weakness. Listen up. His voice cut through the Georgia heat like a blade. Today is your final endurance test. 12 miles, full gear, 60-pound ruck, and you will complete it in under 3 hours or you will fail this course. Do you understand me? Yes, Sergeant. The formation shouted back. Cole's eyes swept over the group, lingering for just a moment on Maya. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. Doubt maybe, or pity. Some of you won't finish, he continued. Some of you will drop out before the first mile is over. And some of you, his eyes landed squarely on Maya now, some of you never should have started in the first place. The words hit her like a slap. Around her, a few soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Others grinned. Hodges coughed to cover a laugh. Maya's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Cole stepped closer, stopping directly in front of her. He looked down, his shadow swallowing her whole. Reeves, he said, his voice low and cold. You've struggled every single week. You barely passed the last 2 physical tests. You're the smallest, the slowest, and the weakest link in this entire platoon. He paused, letting the words sink in. I'm giving you an out right now. Walk away, save yourself the humiliation, because you're not going to make it. The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye was on her, every breath held. Maya looked up at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. I'm not quitting, Sergeant. Cole's eyes narrowed. You will. No, Sergeant, she said again, louder this time. I won't. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then slowly he stepped back. We'll see, he said, and there was something in his tone that made her stomach twist. Not anger, not even disappointment, it was certainty. He believed she would fail. He believed she would break. And maybe deep down part of her believed it too, but she couldn't let that part win. The march began at 0600 hours, 60 pounds on her back. Rifle in her hands, boots laced tight. The sun barely over the horizon, but already the heat was building. They moved in a long column, 2 by 2, boots hitting the dirt in rhythm. For the first mile, it wasn't so bad. Maya kept pace, breathing steady, focusing on the soldier in front of her. But by mile 2, the weight started to settle in. Her shoulders ached. Her lower back burned. The straps of the ruck dug into her skin like knives. By mile 3, she was falling behind. Pick it up, Reeves. Cole's voice barked from somewhere behind her. You're slowing down the entire line. She gritted her teeth and pushed harder, her legs screaming in protest. By mile 4, her vision started to blur. Sweat poured down her face, stinging her eyes. Her breathing came in ragged gasps. She's done, she heard Hodges say as he passed her. Told you, Braxton added with a laugh. By mile 5, she was at the back of the formation, dead last. Every step felt like she was dragging an anchor. Her knees buckled once, twice, but she caught herself. She would not fall, she would not quit. But then, at mile 6, everything changed. The explosion came out of nowhere, a sudden, deafening boom that shook the ground and sent a wave of heat and dust rolling over the column. For a moment, everything stopped, time, sound, breath. Then the screaming started. IED. IED, someone shouted. Chaos erupted. Soldiers scattered, dropping to the ground, shouting orders, checking for injuries. Maya's training kicked in. She dropped her ruck, unshouldered her rifle, and moved toward the front of the column where the smoke was rising. And that's when she saw them. 2 soldiers on the ground. One wasn't moving. The other was clutching his leg, blood pouring between his fingers. It was Hodges and Braxton, the same 2 who had mocked her. Laughed at her. Told everyone she didn't belong. Now they were bleeding in the dirt. Medic, someone was screaming. We need a medic. But the medic was 2 miles back with the support vehicle. Cole was there, barking orders, trying to organize the chaos. He looked at the 2 wounded men, then at the rest of the platoon. We need to get them out of here now, he shouted. I need 2 volunteers to carry them back to the rally point. Silence. The soldiers looked at each other, looked at the wounded men, looked at the 6 miles they still had left to march. No one moved. Carrying a wounded soldier meant adding another 180 pounds to your load. It meant falling behind. It meant failing the test. Anyone, Cole shouted again, and now there was something close to desperation in his voice. Maya didn't think. She just moved. She stepped forward. I'll do it, she said. Cole's head snapped toward her. Reeves, you can barely carry your own gear. I'll do it, she said again, her voice cutting through his doubt like a blade. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he looked at the 2 men bleeding on the ground. He had no choice. Fine, he said, but you'll need help. Who else? Still no one moved. Maya looked at the platoon, at the men who had trained beside her, who had ignored her, who had whispered and laughed and waited for her to fail. None of them met her eyes. I'll do it alone, she said. Cole's face twisted. That's suicide, Reeves. You can't carry 2 men 6 miles. Watch me, she said. And before he could say another word, she moved to Hodges first. He was conscious, groaning, his leg mangled. She hooked her arms under his shoulders and dragged him up, slinging his arm over her neck. He was heavy, so heavy her knees almost buckled, but she held. Then she turned to Braxton. He was unconscious, dead weight. Blood soaked his uniform. She knelt beside him, worked her other arm under his shoulders, and hauled him up too. 2 men, 1 on each side. Nearly 400 pounds between them and her own gear. The pain was immediate, blinding. Her shoulders felt like they were tearing apart. Her legs shook so badly she thought they might give out. But she took a step, then another. Cole was shouting something, but she couldn't hear him anymore. All she could hear was her own heartbeat, her own breath, and the voice in her head that whispered, "You can't do this." But she didn't listen to that voice. She listened to the other one. The one that had kept her going every time someone told her she didn't belong. The one that said, "Prove them wrong." And she started walking. The first 100 yards were hell. Maya's world narrowed to 3 things: the weight crushing her shoulders, the burning in her legs, and the path ahead. Everything else disappeared. The voices of the other soldiers, the commands being shouted, the sound of helicopter blades in the distance. None of it mattered. All that mattered was the next step. Hodges was semi-conscious, groaning with every movement. His blood soaked into her uniform, warm and sticky. Braxton was completely out, his full weight sagging against her right side, threatening to pull her down with every stride. "Reeves," Cole's voice cut through the fog. He was jogging alongside her, his face a mixture of disbelief and concern. "Put them down. We'll wait for the medic vehicle." "This is insane." She didn't answer. She couldn't waste the breath. "That's an order, Sergeant," he barked. She kept walking, her boots scraped against the red clay. Her vision tunneled, sweat poured down her face, mixing with the dust until it felt like her skin was made of sandpaper. 200 yards. Her right knee buckled and she stumbled. For a terrible moment she thought they were all going down, but somehow impossibly she caught herself. Adjusted the weight. Kept moving. Behind her she could hear the other soldiers forming up. They were continuing the march, leaving her behind. As ordered. As expected, this was her burden now. Hers alone. 300 yards. The muscles in her shoulders were screaming. Not just hurting, screaming. Every nerve ending felt like it was on fire. The straps of her tactical vest cut into her collarbone. Her lower back spasmed with every step. "You're going to kill yourself," Cole said. He was still beside her, matching her pace. "And maybe them too. Is that what you want?" She finally looked at him. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face covered in dirt and sweat, but her gaze was steady. "I won't. Let them die. Because everyone else was afraid." "To fail a test?" she gasped out between breaths. Something changed in Cole's expression. The certainty she'd seen that morning, the absolute conviction that she would quit, flickered. "Then let me help you," he said. "No." "Reeves," I said no. "Sergeant?" Her voice was stronger now despite the agony. "You said I'd quit. You said I didn't belong." She took another step. Then another. "Watch me. Prove you wrong." Cole fell silent. He stopped walking, standing there in the middle of the path as she continued forward. She didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. By half a mile, her body was shutting down. Her legs moved on pure instinct. Her consciousness was fracturing, splitting between the desperate need to keep going and the primal urge to collapse. Hodges had stopped groaning. That terrified her more than anything. Was he unconscious now too? Was he dying while she struggled to save him? "Stay with me," she whispered. "Both of you. Stay with me." The path ahead wavered like a mirage. The tree line seemed to move further away with every step instead of closer. She thought about her father. He'd been Army too. Ranger Battalion. He'd told her stories when she was little, before the cancer took him. Stories about carrying wounded brothers out of firefights in Mogadishu. About never leaving anyone behind. "The weight doesn't matter," he'd told her once, his voice already weak, his body already betraying him. "When it's your brother bleeding out, you don't feel the weight. You just feel the purpose." She'd been 17 when he died. 26 now. 9 years of proving herself. 9 years of being told she was too small, too weak, too female. 9 years of refusing to quit. The weight mattered. God, it mattered. Every pound felt like a mountain, but the purpose mattered more. At 3/4 of a mile, she heard voices ahead. Is that her? Holy hell, she's actually doing it. She's carrying both of them? Some of the soldiers from the platoon had stopped on the side of the path. They'd been ordered to continue the march, but they were watching her now. Staring, she recognized Private Chen, Specialist Morrison, Corporal Davis. They'd never mocked her outright, but they'd never defended her either. They'd watched in silence when Hodges and Braxton made their jokes. They'd looked away when Cole singled her out. Now they stood there, frozen, as she dragged 2 full-grown men past them. "Help her," someone said. Cole said to continue the march. Morrison replied, "We can't. Screw the march." Chen stepped forward, moving toward Maya. "Stand down, Private." Cole's voice boomed from behind them. He'd been following her the whole time, Maya realized, keeping pace at a distance. She made her choice. You make yours. Either continue your test or fail it. Chen hesitated, his face torn. Maya locked eyes with him for just a second as she passed. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Don't. She wouldn't let anyone else sacrifice their qualification for her. This was her fight. Her choice. Chen stepped back, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists, and Maya kept walking. 1 mile. Her hearing was going. Everything sounded muffled, distant, like she was underwater. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, irregular and desperate. Her hands had gone numb. She could barely feel Hodges and Braxton anymore. She just knew they were there because of the weight. The impossible crushing weight that was grinding her down into the Georgia clay. She'd stopped sweating. That was bad. She knew that was bad. Heat exhaustion. Heat stroke. Her body was cooking from the inside out, but she couldn't stop. Hodges stirred slightly. A groan escaped his lips. That's it, she gasped. Stay with me. We're going to make it. We're going to... Her left leg gave out. She went down hard, all 3 of them crashing into the dirt. Pain exploded through her knee, her hip, her shoulder. For a moment, she just lay there, pinned under their weight, the sky spinning above her. Get up, a voice said. Get up, get up, get up. But her body wouldn't listen. Her muscles had mutinied. They were done, finished. You failed, another voice whispered. He was right. You should have quit. Footsteps approached. Cole. He knelt down beside her. "It's over, Reeves," he said quietly, not cruelly, almost gently. "You tried. You tried harder than anyone expected, but it's over now." She turned her head to look at him. Her vision was blurry, but she could see his face. He was reaching for his radio. About to call for the medic vehicle. "No," she whispered. "Reeves, not done. You can't even stand." She closed her eyes, took a breath, then another, and then impossibly she began to move. First her hands. She planted them in the dirt. Then her right knee. She pulled it up under her. Cole watched, his hand frozen on his radio. "Reeves, don't." She grabbed Hodges, pulled him up, hooked her arm under his shoulder. Her entire body was shaking, trembling like she was standing in a blizzard. Then Braxton. She reached for him too. "You're going to kill yourself," Cole said, and now there was something in his voice she'd never heard before. Fear. Not for himself. For her. "Maybe," she said. "But I won't quit." She stood up. She didn't know how. Biomechanically, physiologically, it shouldn't have been possible. Her muscles were destroyed. Her energy reserves depleted. Her body was in full rebellion. But she stood up, and she started walking again. At 1.5 miles, she stopped feeling pain. That should have terrified her. It meant her body was shutting down, going into shock, prioritizing vital organs over extremities. But instead, it felt like freedom. She could think clearly now, not about the weight, not about the distance, about why she was here. She thought about basic training. The first time a drill sergeant told her she'd never make it. The first time she outran everyone in her platoon and saw the shock on their faces. She thought about her mother, calling her crazy for enlisting, begging her to choose something safer, crying at her graduation and whispering, "Your father would be so proud." She thought about every man who'd ever looked at her uniform and assumed she was admin, supply, anything but combat. She thought about Hodges and Braxton, the things they'd said, the jokes they'd made, and she realized something. She wasn't carrying them to prove them wrong. She wasn't carrying them to prove Cole wrong. She was carrying them because it was the right thing to do. Because they were soldiers. Because they were hers. Because that's what you did. You didn't leave people behind. Not because they deserved to be saved, but because you deserved to be the kind of person who saved them. At 2 miles, the entire platoon was waiting. They'd stopped the march. All of them. Standing on both sides of the path, watching her approach, Cole was shouting at them to get back in formation, but no one moved. Maya barely registered them. Her entire world was the rhythm of her feet. Left, right, left, right. As she passed between them, someone started clapping. Then another. Then all of them. The sound washed over her like water. She didn't acknowledge it. Couldn't. She needed every ounce of focus to keep moving, but she heard it. And somewhere deep inside, in a place the pain couldn't reach, it mattered. At 2.25 miles, she saw the vehicles, the medical truck, the command post, personnel running toward her. "We've got them," someone shouted. "Medic! We need medics now." Hands reached for her. Tried to take the weight, she held on. Reeves let go. "We've got them." She couldn't, her muscles had locked. Her arms were frozen in place around the 2 wounded soldiers. "Maya." Cole's voice right next to her ear, using her first name. "Let them go. You did it. You can let them go now." Finally, slowly her arms released. Hodges and Braxton were lifted away. Medics swarmed them, checking vitals, starting IVs, shouting medical jargon. Maya stood there swaying, her arms still positioned like she was holding them. Then her legs buckled. She didn't feel herself hit the ground, didn't feel the hands catching her, didn't hear the voices calling her name. Everything went black. Maya woke to white ceiling tiles and the smell of antiseptic. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Her mind was foggy, her thoughts moving like they were swimming through mud. She tried to sit up and pain shot through every muscle in her body. Easy. A hand pressed gently on her shoulder. "Don't move too fast," she turned her head. A nurse stood beside the bed, checking an IV line. The woman was in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. "Where?" Maya's voice came out as a croak. "Fort Benning Medical Center," the nurse said. "You've been out for about 14 hours. How do you feel?"
Maya did a mental inventory.
Her shoulders felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. Her legs were stiff and heavy. Her knee throbbed. But she was alive. Like I got run over by a truck, she managed. The nurse smiled slightly. That's actually not far from the truth. You had severe dehydration, heat exhaustion, and rhabdomyolysis. Your muscles were literally breaking down. Another half-mile and you would have had kidney failure. She paused. What you did was incredibly brave. And incredibly stupid. Maya closed her eyes. The others. Hodges and Braxton. Are they alive? The nurse said quickly. Both of them. Hodges has a fractured tibia and shrapnel wounds. Braxton had a concussion and internal bleeding, but he's stable. They're 2 floors up in surgery recovery. The relief that flooded through Maya was almost painful. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. You saved their lives, the nurse continued. The medic said if they'd waited another 20 minutes for the vehicle, Braxton would have bled out. You got them there in time. Maya didn't know what to say to that. She just nodded. The nurse adjusted the IV bag, then gave Maya's hand a gentle squeeze. Rest. You've got a lot of visitors waiting outside, but I'm not letting anyone in until tomorrow. Doctor's orders. As the nurse left, Maya stared at the ceiling. Her body was destroyed. Every part of her hurt, but she'd done it. She'd carried 2 men 2.25 miles. She'd saved their lives, and she hadn't quit. The next morning, Maya woke to voices outside her room. I don't care what the nurse said, I need to see her now. She recognized that voice. Sergeant First Class Cole. Sir, with all due respect, she needs rest in 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. There was a pause, then the door opened. Cole stepped inside, still in his duty uniform, his face unreadable. He stood at the foot of her bed for a long moment, just looking at her. Sergeant, Maya said quietly, trying to sit up straighter. Don't, he said, raising a hand. Don't try to salute. Don't try to stand, just stay there. She settled back against the pillows, watching him carefully. Cole moved to the chair beside her bed and sat down heavily, like the weight of something invisible was pressing on his shoulders. I came to apologize, he said. Maya blinked. She hadn't expected that. I told you that you didn't belong, he continued, his voice low. I told you that you'd quit. I said it in front of the entire platoon. I humiliated you. He paused, his jaw working. I was wrong. The words hung in the air between them. You weren't completely wrong, Maya said quietly. I was struggling. I was the slowest. The weakest physically. You carried 2 full-grown men over 2 miles, Cole interrupted. Do you understand what that means? I've been in the Army for 22 years. I've served with Rangers, Special Forces, some of the toughest soldiers this country has ever produced. And I have never seen anything like what you did. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. I made a judgment about you based on what I saw on the outside, he said. Your size, your gender. I looked at you and decided you weren't strong enough. But strength isn't just about muscle mass. It's not about how much you can bench press or how fast you can run. He met her eyes. It's about what you do when everything in you is screaming to quit and you don't. That's real strength. And you have more of it than anyone I've ever trained. Maya felt something tight in her chest loosen. She'd spent so long fighting for respect, fighting to prove herself, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually receive it. Thank you, Sergeant, she said softly. Cole nodded. There's something else you should know. The incident yesterday wasn't an IED. It was a training device that malfunctioned. Someone in ordnance screwed up the simulation explosives. It was never supposed to actually hurt anyone. Maya's eyes widened. So it was an accident? Yes, but that's not the point. Cole stood up. The point is that in a real-world scenario, you did exactly what a soldier should do. You acted without hesitation. You sacrificed yourself for your team. And you didn't give up even when you had every reason to. He moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You passed, he said. What? The endurance test. You passed. Under the circumstances, Command has ruled that your completion of the rescue mission more than satisfies the requirements. You're still in the course. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. And the others? The platoon? They finished their march. Most of them passed. Cole's expression darkened slightly. But that's actually why I needed to talk to you. There's been a development. 20 minutes after Cole left, Maya's room door opened again. This time it was Captain Patricia Walsh, the company commander. She was a stern woman in her early 40s with sharp features and calculating eyes. Sergeant Reeves, she said, closing the door behind her. How are you feeling? Better, ma'am. Ready to get back to training. Walsh smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Maya's stomach sank. Ma'am? Walsh pulled up the chair Cole had vacated and sat down. What you did yesterday has created complications. There are questions being raised about your actions. Questions? Maya tried to keep her voice steady. I saved 2 soldiers' lives. Yes, you did. And that's commendable. However, you also directly disobeyed a superior officer. Sergeant Cole ordered you to wait for medical support. You refused. He gave me permission to attempt the rescue. He gave you permission to attempt it with help. You insisted on doing it alone. That constitutes insubordination. Walsh's tone was clinical, detached. Additionally, by taking on a burden you weren't physically qualified for, you put all 3 lives at risk. The medical staff says you were minutes from complete system failure. If you'd collapsed earlier, Hodges and Braxton would have died on the trail. Maya felt like she'd been punched, but I didn't collapse. I got them there. This time, Walsh said, but what about next time? What you did required either extraordinary luck or divine intervention. You're asking the Army to trust that you can replicate that performance under combat conditions. Can you? I can do whatever is required of me, ma'am. Walsh studied her for a long moment. Corporal Hodges and Private Braxton have filed statements. They want to speak with you. I've denied those requests for now, but I thought you should know. Their statements are not favorable to you. The words hit Maya like ice water. What do you mean? I can't discuss the details, but there are allegations that your actions were motivated by a desire to prove a point, rather than genuine concern for their welfare, that you used their injuries as an opportunity for personal glory. Maya's hands clenched the bedsheets. That's not true, isn't it? Walsh tilted her head. You'd been mocked by these men for weeks, humiliated. Then you get the chance to be their savior to make them and everyone else look bad for doubting you. You're telling me that didn't factor into your decision at all? I made my decision because they were bleeding and no one else was helping them, Maya said, her voice rising. I didn't think about anything except getting them to safety. Maybe. Or maybe you saw an opportunity and took it. Either way, the optics are problematic. Walsh stood up. There's going to be an investigation. Standard procedure for any training incident with injuries. You'll need to give a formal statement. Until that's complete, you're on medical hold. No training. No duty. Ma'am, please. This isn't a punishment, Sergeant. It's protocol. Walsh moved to the door. But I'll be honest with you. There are people who think what you did was heroic. And there are people who think you're a liability. The investigation will determine which assessment is correct. She left without another word. Maya sat there staring at the closed door, her mind reeling. She'd saved their lives. She'd proven herself. She'd done everything right, and somehow, she was the one being investigated. 3 days later, Maya was released from the medical center with orders to report to her barracks and await further instructions. She walked across the base with her discharge papers in hand, her body still aching, but functional. Soldiers passed her, some nodding, others staring. Word had spread about what happened. She could see it in their faces. Some looked at her with respect. Others looked at her with suspicion. When she reached her barracks, she found her bunk exactly as she'd left it. Her gear was still organized. Her footlocker locked, but there was something different, a letter placed carefully on her pillow. She picked it up. No name, no return address, just her rank and last name written in block letters on the envelope. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words written in the same block letters. You don't belong here. Maya stared at it for a long time. Then she crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. She'd gotten letters like that before, messages, comments. She'd learned to ignore them. But this felt different. This felt personal. Someone didn't just doubt her. Someone actively wanted her gone. The investigation took 2 weeks. Maya spent those weeks in limbo. She couldn't train, couldn't participate in course activities. She was allowed to use the gym and the mess hall, but everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her. The platoon had moved on to week 9. She should have been with them. Instead, she was stuck doing remedial physical therapy and waiting. She requested to visit Hodges and Braxton multiple times. Each request was denied. She tried to find out what they'd said in their statements. No one would tell her. She felt like she was being erased, like her accomplishment was being rewritten into something shameful. On day 12, She was summoned to a conference room in the headquarters building. Inside, she found a panel of 3 officers. Captain Walsh, a major she didn't recognize, and a lieutenant colonel with enough ribbons on his chest to indicate he'd seen serious combat. Sergeant Reeves, the lieutenant colonel said, gesturing to a chair. Please sit. She sat, her back straight, her hands in her lap. We've completed our investigation into the events of September 14th, he continued. We've reviewed all statements, examined the medical records, and consulted with the training cadre. We're ready to render our findings. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. Her career could end in the next 60 seconds. The lieutenant colonel opened a folder, scanned it, then looked up at her. The panel finds that your actions, while unorthodox and potentially dangerous, were consistent with Army values and the warrior ethos. You saw soldiers in need and responded without regard for personal cost. That is exactly what we train soldiers to do. Relief flooded through her, but she kept her expression neutral. However, he continued, and her stomach dropped, we also find that you displayed poor judgment in refusing assistance and in overestimating your physical capabilities. You are hereby issued a formal counseling statement. This will remain in your file. Additionally, you will undergo a mandatory fitness reassessment before being allowed to return to the course. Maya swallowed hard. Yes, sir. That said, the lieutenant colonel's expression softened slightly. I want you to know that what you did was extraordinary. You saved 2 lives. That matters. Don't let the bureaucracy make you forget that. Thank you, sir. The panel was dismissed. As Maya stood to leave, Captain Walsh caught her arm. One more thing, Walsh said quietly. Hodges and Braxton are being released from medical tomorrow. They've requested to speak with you. I'm approving it. 900 hours, Building 6. Maya nodded, her throat tight. Tomorrow she'd face the 2 men she'd saved, the 2 men who'd tried to destroy her. Maya arrived at Building 6 at 0845 hours. 15 minutes early? Old habit. The building was a small administrative structure on the south end of the base, mostly used for counseling sessions and private meetings. The hallway was empty except for a single administrative specialist sitting at a desk, scrolling through her phone. Sergeant Reeves, the specialist asked without looking up. Yes. Conference room B. Down the hall, second door on your left. They're already inside. Maya's pulse quickened. She walked down the hallway, her boots echoing on the linoleum floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. She stopped outside the door, took a deep breath, and knocked. Come in, a voice called. Hodges. She opened the door. The conference room was small. A single table. 4 chairs. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. Corporal Danny Hodges sat on one side of the table, his injured leg propped up on another chair. His face was thinner than she remembered, pale from weeks inside. But his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating. Beside him sat Private First Class Kent Braxton. He had a bandage on his head, partially hidden by his patrol cap. His left arm was in a sling. He looked worse than Hodges, older somehow, like the injury had aged him. Both men stared at her as she entered. Sergeant Reeves, Hodges said. Not quite mocking, but not quite respectful either. Good to see you up and around. Hodges, Braxton. Maya closed the door behind her but didn't sit. You wanted to see me? Yeah, Hodges said, we did. Sit down. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Coming from a corporal to a sergeant, Maya stayed standing. I'll stand, thanks. Hodges' jaw tightened. Fine. Have it your way. He glanced at Braxton, who hadn't said anything yet, then back to Maya. We wanted to talk to you about what happened, about the statements we gave. I haven't been allowed to read them, Maya said evenly. Well, let me summarize. Hodges leaned back in his chair. We told the truth. We said that you carried us back to the rally point, that you refused help, that you nearly killed yourself doing it. He paused. We also said that we think you did it for the wrong reasons. Maya's hands clenched at her sides, but she kept her voice steady. And what reasons were those? To prove a point, Braxton spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. To make us look bad. To make everyone who doubted you look bad. I did it because you were bleeding, Maya said, her voice hard as steel. I did it because no one else would. Yeah, well, that's how you see it, Hodges said. But the way we see it, you used our injuries as an opportunity. You could have waited for the medic vehicle. We would have been fine, but instead you turned it into this big dramatic rescue so you could play hero. The words hit Maya like physical blows. She'd expected resentment, maybe even anger. But not this. Not a complete rewriting of what happened. Braxton was bleeding internally, she said, struggling to keep her composure. The medic said he would have died if... The medic said a lot of things, Hodges interrupted. Doesn't change the fact that you made a choice that put all three of us at risk. If you'd collapsed half a mile earlier, we all would have died. You gambled with our lives to make yourself look good. Maya stared at them, disbelief warring with fury. You think I wanted to carry you? You think I wanted to destroy my body? Risk kidney failure, risk dying just to prove something to you? Didn't you? Braxton asked softly. The question hung in the air like smoke, and the worst part was Maya couldn't answer it with absolute certainty. Had part of her wanted to prove them wrong? Yes, of course. She was human, but that wasn't why she'd done it. That wasn't the reason, was it? I saved your lives, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Whatever you think my motivations were, that's what happened. I saved you, Hodges nodded slowly. Yeah, you did. And that's actually why we wanted to talk to you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table toward her. What is this? Maya asked, not touching it. A revised statement, Hodges said. Both of us signed it this morning. It clarifies our previous statements. Says we were in shock that our initial assessment was clouded by trauma and medication. It says that you acted heroically, that you saved our lives, and that we were wrong about your motivations. Maya stared at the paper like it might be a snake. Why? Because it's the truth, Braxton said quietly. Hodges shifted in his chair, uncomfortable now. Look, Reeves, we were assholes to you. For weeks, we made jokes, we undermined you, we wanted you to fail. And when you had every reason to leave us in the dirt to let someone else deal with us, you didn't. You carried us. Both of us nearly died doing it. He looked down at his hands. I've had 2 weeks to think about that, he continued. 2 weeks to lie in a hospital bed and remember what it felt like to be bleeding out in the dirt, thinking I was going to die. And then feeling you grab me, feeling you drag me up, hearing you tell me to stay with you. His voice cracked slightly. You didn't have to do that. Especially not for me, Braxton nodded. I don't remember much. But Hodges told me what you did. How far you carried us, what it cost you. He paused. Our first statements were wrong. They were bitter and scared and looking for someone to blame. But you're not the one to blame. You're the reason we're alive. Maya felt something hot and painful building in her chest. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. The revised statement has been submitted to Captain Walsh, Hodges said. It should help with the investigation. We also requested to speak to Sergeant Cole and Lieutenant Colonel Morrison directly, to make sure they understand that our initial statements were bullshit. He stood up slowly, favoring his good leg, and moved around the table. He stopped in front of Maya and extended his hand. I'm sorry, he said, for everything. For what I said, for what I made you feel, for doubting you. You're a better soldier than I'll ever be. Maya looked at his hand, at his face. She saw genuine remorse there. Genuine respect. She took his hand, shook it. Apology accepted, she said. Braxton stood as well, moving more carefully. He didn't extend his hand, couldn't with the sling, but he nodded to her. Thank you, he said simply. For my life. Maya nodded back, not trusting herself to speak. That afternoon, Maya was called back to headquarters. This time, it was just Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. He sat behind his desk, the revised statements in front of him. I've read these, he said without preamble. They change things considerably. The formal counseling statement will still stand. You did disobey a direct order and take unnecessary risks. But the tone of the investigation will be different in your permanent file. It will reflect heroism under extraordinary circumstances, not recklessness. Thank you, sir, Maya said. Don't thank me. Thank Hodges and Braxton. They could have ended your career. Instead, they saved it. Morrison leaned back in his chair. You return to training tomorrow, week 9. You've got a lot of ground to make up, but Sergeant Cole thinks you can do it. So do I. I won't let you down, sir. I know you won't, Sergeant. He paused. There's one more thing. There's been talk. Among the training cadre, among the other students, some people think you should be recognized formally for what you did. Commendation medal, maybe more. Others think it sets a dangerous precedent. rewarding someone for disobeying orders even if the outcome was positive. Maya shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I don't need a medal. I just need to finish the course." Morrison smiled slightly. "That's exactly the answer I expected. And it's exactly why you deserve to be here." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Dismissed, Sergeant. And welcome back." Maya returned to training the next morning. When she walked into the formation, the entire platoon went silent. 30 soldiers all watching her, all waiting to see what would happen. Sergeant Cole stood at the front. When he saw her, he nodded. "Sergeant Reeves," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Welcome back. Take your position." She moved to her spot in the formation, the same spot she'd held before the incident. As she settled in, the soldier next to her, Private Chen, leaned over slightly. "Good to have you back," he whispered. Another soldier behind her. "Hell yeah." And then, spontaneously without any order given, the entire platoon began to clap. It started slow, just a few soldiers, then more. Then all of them. Cole didn't stop it. He just stood there, a small smile on his face, and let it happen. Maya stood at attention, staring straight ahead, tears streaming down her face despite her best efforts to stop them. The remaining weeks of the course were the hardest of Maya's life. She'd lost 2 weeks of training. Her body was still recovering. She had to work twice as hard as everyone else just to keep up. But she did keep up. More than that, she excelled. The other soldiers, who'd once whispered about her, now sought her advice, asked her to train with them, listened when she spoke. Hodges and Braxton, once they returned to limited duty, went out of their way to help her, spotting her in the gym, running extra drills with her, making sure she had the support she needed. It wasn't friendship exactly. The history was too complicated for that. But it was respect, real earned respect. And that mattered more. Graduation day came on a crisp November morning. 28 soldiers stood in formation. 4 had dropped out. They'd made it through. Maya stood in the second row, her uniform pressed, her boots shined, her chest tight with emotion. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison gave the commencement speech. He talked about sacrifice, about perseverance, about the warrior ethos. Then he did something unexpected. "Before we dismiss," he said, "I want to recognize one soldier in particular. Sergeant Maya Reeves, front and center." Maya's heart stopped. She glanced at Cole, who gestured for her to move. She walked to the front, her mind racing. Morrison held a small blue box. "Sergeant Reeves, for your actions on September 14th, for risking your life to save 2 fellow soldiers, and for demonstrating courage and selflessness beyond the call of duty, you are hereby awarded the Soldier's Medal." The Soldier's Medal, the highest award for heroism outside of combat. Maya stood frozen as Morrison pinned the medal to her chest. The platoon erupted in applause. Real thunderous applause. Morrison stepped back and saluted her. She returned the salute, tears streaming freely now, not caring who saw. After the ceremony, as the soldiers dispersed to celebrate with their families, Maya stood alone for a moment, looking out over the training grounds. "Reeves," she turned. Cole approached, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "Hell of a journey," he said. "Yes, Sergeant," she replied. "I was wrong about you. I've already said that. But I want to say it again, here, now that it's over. You proved me wrong in every way that matters." "Thank you, Sergeant. That means everything." Cole nodded, then hesitated. "What's next for you?" "Where are you headed?" Maya smiled. "Ranger School. I got accepted. I start in January." Cole's eyebrows rose. "Ranger School? That's even harder than this." "I know. They're going to doubt you. Try to break you, tell you that you don't belong." "I know," Maya said again, her smile widening. "But I've had practice." Cole laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "Yeah, you have. Give 'em hell, Reeves. Always, Sergeant." As he walked away, Maya turned back to the training grounds, the obstacle courses, the trails, the red Georgia clay that had tested her in every way possible. She thought about her father, about his stories, about the weight and the purpose. She thought about Hodges and Braxton, about carrying them when she had every reason not to. She thought about the instructor who said she'd quit, and she smiled, because she hadn't quit. She'd finished. Not just finished, she'd carried 2 wounded soldiers while doing it, and now she was ready for whatever came next. The weight didn't matter. The purpose did, and Maya Reeves had found hers. Epilogue. 6 months later, a video appeared on social media. It showed a small woman, barely 5'4", crossing the finish line at Ranger School. Exhausted, covered in mud, but standing the comment section exploded. She's too small for that. Diversity hire. She'll never make it in real combat, but Maya didn't read the comments. She was too busy, packing for her deployment, because the doubters were still there. They always would be, but so was she, and she wasn't going anywhere.